I doubled the amount of reading I got done this month as opposed to last month, which sounds ultra impressive. It sounds like I went from like reading 30 books last month to 60, but I did read 10 this month, so that's not too bad. And one of them, this is coming up later, it's one of my favorite books of all time. Now, I even watched the movie version last, I don't know, a couple nights ago. It's this one right here. It took up the majority of my reading time, the majority of my life, but you will hear absolutely no complaints from me. It is absolutely spectacular, one of my favorite books of all time, and so you'll be hearing more about that later on in the video. So 10 books in total, 2 of them I listened to on Audible. The first book that I finished in February is Steven Pressfield's latest memoir called Government Cheese, and I thought it was a strange title for the book. He has an explanation for it. It's not important here. Just know that it is phenomenal. Like, if you're a fan of Steven Pressfield at all, if you've heard everyone talking about The War of Art or Turning Pro, both of which I've read and loved, this is more like his personal story, and parts of it are just like super interesting, and like you get a much deeper, like he goes much further into his own life here than he ever has before. So like his other books are sort of more outward facing, like more about the writer, more about you, and this is a memoir, obviously more about him. Okay, side note, this guy that I know, this is too funny not to share. His one complaint about the Serena Williams documentary was that too much of it was about her. Just, what? Anyway, moving on. Next book was Bruce Lee, Artist of Life. And this is a sort of a compilation of some of his writings, and it was edited by this guy named John Little, who's done a few books like that. And it's just full of these sort of striking passages that you really can't stop thinking about. And one of the sort of, they're almost like essays to himself. He's like the Chinese Marcus Aurelius, basically. One of the things that he spent a lot of time writing and thinking about was this idea that, self-actualization, which is sort of, all about, learning more about yourself and bringing more of your true self forward and discovering like what you're actually about, what you're interested in, like where you're actually moving in life, and sort of fulfilling your own potential, so to speak. That's one pursuit. But yet most people, what they're concerned with is this sort of self-image actualization, sort of this bringing forth what other people expect them to be. So you've got a whole lot of people focused on self-image actualization and totally neglecting the more important pursuit of self-actualization. So that's just one minor part of the book. And but it's overall, it's very worth reading. I'm going to move a little bit faster now, and see, I could talk about these books for far longer than you want to listen to me talk about these books. But the third book that I finished last month was this one, The Little Black Book of Workout Motivation by Mike Matthews. And I have not been this impressed with a fitness book in a long time. I reviewed it from my Instagram a few weeks ago. I finished it in just a few days, and it was excellent. He and I believe a lot of the same things about fitness, how it should add to your life. It should make your life better. It works with the rest of your life to make it more complete, and it gives you energy for the stuff that you want to do, and it just makes you look and feel good, and like you should look forward to it, and it's not supposed to be some like giant chore, some like dreadful obligation that you just have to sort of get through. It doesn't have to be like that, and so this book is definitely a way to sort of get over that and get yourself not necessarily to the gym, but just get active and get moving, and you'll thank yourself for it. The next book that I finished was actually an Audible listen as well. It was the Irrational Male by Rollo Tomasi, and I would recommend it. I think it's a good book. I think he's got an awful lot right. I think his general overview of relationships and sort of dating philosophy is right on. It's definitely a book that will sort of shatter any illusions that you might have about dating and relationships and all that. I do think, he's sort of not a dogmatist, but like, I get the feeling that if you were to disagree with any of his points, he would just sort of like belittle you. Like it's sort of like he's right about everything, and like this is how the world works, and like if you don't see it, you're kind of a simpleton. And like obviously, like I don't write that way, I don't speak that way, so like I sort of had to take that with a pillar of salt, if you will. But at the same time, he does get an awful lot right. So this is the irony with the whole book. So it would be phenomenal to read as like an 18-year-old, 19-year-old, but those people, like people of that age, are the most likely to sort of misunderstand what he's saying and sort of take it like too far and sort of like be sort of not brainwashed, but pretty close to it. And it's like, but if you read it when you're like 30, it could be too late. So it's one of those books I can't like strongly recommend, like you have to run out and listen to it or read it, but it is really good. I actually think a much better dating book is What Women Want by Tucker Max. I know, like, Tucker Max wrote a dating book. Like, like, what universe is this? But it is actually really good. He co-authored it with an evolutionary psychologist named Jeffrey Miller. I've actually done a book breakdown on What Women Want. It's available at the Stairway to Wisdom. Again, you can find that in the link in the description. And he also, I'm talking about Miller now, he's got an excellent book about evolutionary psychology and consumerism and everything like that. It's called Spent. And I also have a breakdown of that book for the Stairway to Wisdom. So those three books, Rational Male, Spent, What Women Want, definitely recommend checking them out at least. But I think if you're looking for just like do better with dating, start with Tucker Max's book, which is a sentence I never thought I'd say. The next book I read on my phone, and it's called The Bezos Letters, and it's basically a breakdown of all the shareholder letters that Jeff Bezos wrote ever since like 1997, I think was the first one, or 95. Like from the very beginnings of when Amazon went public until now, basically, or until a couple years ago, and it's his like business philosophy and what Amazon does right and what they focus on. And I spoke a little bit about the book in this video right here. I'll put like a card somewhere that you can check it out after you finish watching this video. But definitely really good business book. Next one that I read, Casino Royale by Ian Fleming, the very first Bond book. I flew through this one. There's not a whole lot to say. If you've seen the movie, it's actually quite faithful to the book, minus like the 1950s sexism and stuff like that, which is, man, it's in there. But it's a pretty good book. I enjoyed it. I didn't have to think all that much. But it's fairly exciting, and I'm going to watch the movie again because it just reminded me of how cool James Bond actually is. So I liked it. Next up is another business book called Play Bigger. It's got 4 authors. They go by the name Category Pirates, and so this actually, it takes much more explanation than I'm willing to do right now, but it's a business book about creating your own category, basically. A quick example would be Apple and the smartphone. So what they did is they created the category of smartphones and, sort of personal computer that you can hold in your pocket, and then they dominated that category, and they became the category king. And so the book is about how you can do that in an industry, and how you can sort of establish yourself as the category king and make everyone else sort of compare themselves to you. If you run a business yourself or you're interested in starting one, I highly recommend both this one, Play Bigger, and their latest one called Snow Leopard, and it's all about creating a category of one. Both of them were really good. And we have reached the point in the video where I get to reveal one of my favorite books of all time. It is 1,243 pages of awesomeness. It is the French adventure novel from the 19th century. It came out in like 1844, I believe. It is The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas, and it is phenomenal. It's one of my favorite books of all time. I know that I have like 100+ favorite books. I don't care. This is absolutely one of them. It took me like a month and a half to read it, but I'm so incredibly glad that I did. I loved it so much that I immediately watched the movie right afterwards, and I waited until I finished the book to watch the movie, but I realize now that I didn't even have to because the book is totally different. Like I wouldn't have ruined anything, even though the book and the 2002 movie with Guy Pearce and Jim Caviezel is really, really, really good. Again, it's sort of beyond the scope of this video to go into like a detailed plot summary. The short version of the short version is that this guy, Edmond Dantes, is wrongfully imprisoned for a crime he did not commit, and he's set up by these 3 individuals that he thought were his friends. They're not his friends. So this all happens in the first couple 100 pages, so I'm not giving too much away here when I say that he is shipped off to this really intimidating castle dungeon place, like a castle dungeon place called Chateau d'If. He spends like a decade in there, and he meets this meets this priest who everybody thinks is insane because he keeps offering them like treasure to allow him to leave. He's like, I'll give you all this treasure if you just like release me, and nobody believes him. They all think he's like insane. But Edmond Dantes befriends the guy in prison, and the priest dies and tells him exactly where to find the treasure. Dantes escapes, and he finds it, becomes like fabulously wealthy, cultured, rich, knowledgeable, but everything powerful. And the rest of the novel, like 900 pages, is him setting up his like grand master plan for revenge to basically fuck up the shit of everyone who put him away. It is really, really, really good. And it's one of those ones that comes with like a really heavy book hangover. Like you think about it for a long time after you're finished it, and I really cannot recommend it highly enough. The Count of Monte Cristo. The second to last book is another audio listen. So 3 audiobooks this month, which is kind of unusual for me. I read most of my books either on my phone or the physical version. But this one was The Productivity Project by Chris Bailey, and it's really, really good. And I was sort of surprised at how many of these things that he recommends that I already do. But I sort of had to discover them for myself over time. And so if you read this one or listen to this one, you can sort of skip that sort of trial and error and just implement what he tried and what I've tried and implemented myself, and because his productivity tactics and strategies really do work really well. And the main focus is basically balancing these 3 resources, which are really incredibly important for time management, which is your time, energy, and attention. And they all work sort of together. So if you don't have energy or focus, you could have all the time in the world, but it's not going to do you any good. And if you have like time and energy, but no focus, then it's sort of the same deal. So if you can optimize all 3 of those things, you're going to be a lot better off. And that's like the main message of the book. Which brings me to the last book that I finished this month, or last month, and I'm sort of cheating because I plan to finish this tonight. Like, this is February 28th that I'm recording this on, and I've got just a few pages left in this one. It is The Quest for Character by Massimo Pilucci, and I've mentioned him before on this channel, and he's one author who, like, whenever he comes out with a new book, I just buy it immediately. Like, I don't care, like, I don't sort of spend a whole lot of time figuring out like what it's actually about or like deciding whether to read it. I just go out and buy it because it's just like everything that he writes is that good. The subtitle gives you a pretty good idea of what it's about. The Quest for Character, what the story of Socrates and Alcibiades teaches us about our search for good leaders. And it's not just about them, it's a wide range of philosophers trying to teach rulers how to be good leaders. And sort of it goes over several different case studies of people who have failed spectacularly. We're thinking of like Nero and people like that. And Plato even tried to teach a couple guys. It didn't turn out all that well. And so you've got some bad stories there. But then you've got people like Marcus Aurelius, who was like a legit philosopher king, and his sort of backstory and how he became a good leader and how philosophy sort of informed his development into such a good leader. So that is the 10 books that I finished last month, and or the 9.5 that I finished, 9 7/8, and the 1/8 that I plan to finish tonight. If I had to pick a favorite, of course, I'd go with The Count of Monte Cristo. It is just absolutely incredible, and if you have the patience to sit through like 1,200 pages, which is really not that hard. Like it's not a particularly difficult book, it's just long. So if you're concerned about whether or not you have the ability to read such a long book, you do. Like, it's not that hard. That being said, if you want to upgrade your reading abilities, I highly recommend checking out this video right here. It's my absolute best tip for being able to read 52 books in a single year. You can check it out right now. It's not long, it's like 6 minutes. It will definitely help you out a lot. So enjoy, I'll see you on the next video, and hey, happy reading.
To do something great, sacrifice is a part of it. It's just the start of it. You can't start then quit. You have to harness this, cause energy is bliss. And when I swing, I miss, but then I swing and hit. So I'ma swing again, and I'ma swing again.